But first, Smashing Pumpkins are one of my all-time favourite bands. I bang on about them constantly on the show, and that's fine. The band formed in Chicago back in 1988, rose to be one of the most prominent rock acts in the 90s, sold over 30 million albums worldwide, got 2 Grammys, 2 MTV VMAs, an American Music Award, etc., etc. But more importantly, they just released the final act of the trilogy album Atum, which came out on Friday. The album is a 33-track in 3-act sequel to 1995's Melancholy and Infinite Sadness and 2000's Machine and Machines of God. There is a massive narrative story that happens throughout the album across its 33 tracks. It is a rock opera, which, as I said to Billy when we were having the chat, is a pretty bold statement, but something I appreciate. So you're going to hear us talk about that, also about the narrative of the record. We're also going to play 4 tracks from the album, starting with the first, ending with the last. It's called Start to Finish. That's how we do it. This is Smashing Pumpkins, Billy Corgan. So the album opens with Autumn, the instrumental, which is kind of the theme and that raises the curtain on the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then heads into Butterfly Suite. So tell me a bit about the opening and how those were formed to open such a vast world.
Well, I harken back to Melancholy, where, you know, I bought an old piano that I still have, and I wrote what became the Melancholy theme, which opens the album. There's something beautiful about sort of having an announcement. So I thought, right, I need to write an announcement. Like, it sets the emotional tone and tenor. So I can't even tell you how I wrote it. I don't even remember. I think I just sat down at the piano and I just figured it out. It doesn't sound very sexy, but I really like the version. It's cool. It's got a vibe to it, you know? And there's a little bit of a wink in there to some of the stuff like Floyd and Genesis. There's a wink to those types of bands that we of course grew up listening to. I don't know. There was something about that era of prog rock that, you know, there was a sense of anything was possible, and it wasn't so bad to do kind of a wonky 4-minute instrumental or something. That was like part of your street cred or something. So me and Jimmy love doing stuff like this, even if it's just for a good laugh. I love anybody that calls their shop something world, like Bicycle World or Bicycle King.
Yeah.
So writing rock opera on your record is the equivalent of saying, like, Rock King, you know, Rock World. It's like you're asking for it, right? Because you walk in the store and go, all right, Sausage King, show me. You know what I mean? Prove it to me. Prove it to me that you're the Sausage King, right?
Yeah, I agree.
So when I sat there with the piece of paper and the day came where they're like, you know, they're on me, what's the title of the record? Like, what's the official title? Is it just Atum? So, okay, I sit with the piece of paper and I write Atum. Smashing Pumpkins Atum, a bit boring. Smashing Pumpkins Atum, a musical in 3 acts. That's a little bolder. Smashing Pumpkins Atum, a rock opera in 3 acts. I feel that twinge in my body like, oh my God, some bearded critic from Brooklyn's really going to have a go over this one. And that's where the punk in me comes out and says, like, you know, it's the old medieval thing of throwing down the knight's glove, you know, like ready to have a duel. It's saying to that critical class, all right, I've done a rock opera. Take this one on.
Amazing. So let's talk a bit about the characters with it and the narrative. It's so vast.
I mean, I can give a quick synopsis if that helps.
Please.
So the quick synopsis is an artist in the future named Shiny, which is the 3rd iteration of these characters. So there was Zero on Melancholy, Glass on the Machina record from 2000. So this is the 3rd iteration of the same person. So he has a different name now, Shiny. And Shiny has been exiled into space by a governmental agency called the X and I. He's considered a danger to this world society. And so they offer you in this future dystopia, rather than put you in prison or kill you, they're just going to put you in a beautiful ship made for one, where you'll spend the rest of your days looking down upon the earth and be up there amongst the stars. And that's it. And unbeknownst to Shiny, there's a woman that's followed him into space. She's very wealthy, so she's used wealth and bribery to get her ship. She's not a criminal, but she gets herself placed next to Shiny in space. He doesn't know she's up there. He doesn't even know who she is. Her name is June. Just consider her like an Uber fan, with a bit of a Stevie Nicks complex in terms of the way she dresses. And on this particular day, she gets up and sings her daily love song to Shiny like a good old-fashioned Hollywood musical. And as she's singing to him, he punches in a code which every person in space is given the ability to punch in a code, which is called the March of Life, which is a nice way of saying it allows you to gracefully kill yourself. It breaks your ship out of orbit from the Earth and sends it off towards the sun, where you'll burn up, and that's the end of the story. So that starts the narrative tale, and it eventually evolves AI. There's a robot involved in the story who's like a showgirl, and a very idealistic young person named Osira, who is part of the way the story weaves around. Any version of the record will have the narrative explained in kind of general terms. So it's easy to follow along. And it even says in the booklets who's singing what song, so that helps too. I'm singing every song, but obviously Roger Daltrey was singing his different characters. And my dream one day is to be able to perform Atum with the different characters sung by different people on stage. So think of the album that's coming out now as the Smashing Pumpkins version of the musical, with hopefully other versions of the musical to come with different people involved. If you just like the alternative rock side of the band, there's a whole album's worth of material in the 33. I mean, there's easily 10 to 12 songs that are good rock and roll. So if you like that stuff, I mean, just go listen, pick those songs out, make a playlist, and enjoy, What's interesting is, it's always a wonky thing to try to put together a narrative. And I having done this before, I was keen to understand why Pete Townsend struggled with it as well, because you're trying to basically tell a story with the movie of the mind, while at the same time you're trying to write a good rock song, and they kind of don't always go together well. That which animates the spirit is sung from the position of the governmental authority which puts people into space. The X and I is the name in the musical. So when Shiny, the lead character, comes back to Earth from outer space after all the contrivances of the story, he's welcomed back with open arms, which is very mystifying to him. He's been on a spaceship for 20 years. Last he knew, he was flying into the sun, suiciding himself. He gets brought back to Earth. He comes out of a spacecraft, and there's a stadium full of people with full production welcoming him back. And there's the people who put him into exile, and they literally sing a song saying, "Hey man, your hero's back." They reference him as Zero, because that's the most famous iteration of the character. Not Shiny. Everybody knows him as Zero, right? It's the rat in the cage guy. So here he comes. He comes out of the spaceship going, what the hell is happening? And there's the same people that put him into prison, basically, extolling his virtues. So it opens with, may I have your attention, please? Your hero's come back. All hail Zero, And it's fun to play even with the idea of that this character that I created almost 30 years ago, literally, that would be celebrated as an avatar, like a cartoon character.
Let's talk about the album closer then of Wings.
Yeah, I got to the end of the whole thing, and Spellbinding, which is the second to last track and the current single in America that's doing really well, it felt like the album was done, but I still felt like there was still something to say. So I love the idea of kind of like roll the credits, the song at the end of the movie. And so somehow it ends up in a Latin chant, Agnus Dei, which I think means the Lamb of God, or we're all lambs of God, something like that. There's your band reference for the day. And it's just kind of a musical exposition on okay, we've taken this long journey and the curtain's going down and this is the last little bit of music. And I think we were able to find a really nice note that harkens back in many ways. After Siamese Dream, I think we found it really hard to do sweetness. I think the experience of Siamese Dream, the touring of that record and what the band went through emotionally, internally, and then going on to make Melancholy, which was really in many ways the end of the original band. There's a sweetness there that is hard for me to find at different times. It's more so evident on my solo acoustic work, but of Wings, I think, harkens back to the sweetness of the band that made Siamese Dream. There's elements of that so I really like that you kind of get a little glimpse that somehow in this vast, complicated machine that heart's still beating in there somewhere.
Thank you to Billy Corgan for taking the time to chat to us about Atum, the new album, 33 tracks across 3 acts. The tracks you heard were Of Wings, That Which Animates the Spirit, Steps in Time, and Butterfly Suite. See, the feature start to finish is generally a little more, I don't know, a little easier in the sense that we would take the opening track and the closing track and then talk about one in the middle. But when the work is so vast and it has 33 tracks in it, there's a lot of ground to cover, but I think that was pretty ace.